5:59, 6:59.
We're at 7.
It's like New Year's Eve, huh?
Yeah, I'm counting down the clock.
Tammy, you said you were gonna jump around on these a little bit?
Yes. We're gonna do, 04 before 03.
Okay.
You're just gonna
But,
switch.
but 01 is still 01, and
Okay.
then 4,
And 02?
3, and then we'll skip down to new business. And 02, there was a typo where the paper did not have that right, so it's considered new business because Kim had to re-advertise that.
Okay. All right.
The longest minute ever.
I had nothing to do with that.
It's always that way when you're counting.
Do you have something
when
to
you're
say?
watching
There we go,
time.
7 PM.
Good evening, welcome to the December 27th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. First thing we need to do is approval of, we're going to approve 2 sets of minutes, one from October the 23rd, please. We'll do those in 2 separate motions. So if I can have approval for October 23rd.
I will approve October
Thanks, Bob.
23rd.
Second,
Second?
thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now for the, and I must not have printed those off, what was that date, the November
November
ones?
27th.
November 27th.
27th,
Can
yeah.
I have approval for the November 27th meetings that nothing happened?
I so move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion carried. All in favor? Motion carried. Thank
Yes.
you.
Aye.
Next up, we have to, I need a motion to approve our dates for this next year. I know you've all received a copy of those, and I think, it's pretty much the normal with the exception of it looks like Memorial Day weekend. Other than that, if someone would like to make a
I'd move to
motion to
approve.
approve those, I'd
Second.
appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Now, Justin, do you have anything to add before I go on?
Nope.
Okay, on to unfinished business. Case number 2023-11-01, a special exception for 513 North Ellsworth Street. Gloria Saldivar.
Correct. So this was one of the ones that was tabled from the last meeting. The petitioner is requesting a special exception to allow a home occupation to be located within an R2 zoning district. The proposed home occupation will involve a nutritional supplement business, and it will take place in an accessory structure located in the driveway of the petitioner's property. The petitioner stated that their hours of operation will be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They anticipate 20 to 30 customers per day. There is parking available in the petitioner's driveway as well as an adjacent parking lot owned by the neighbor. And the homeowner will be the only employee of the business. So this home occupation does check the boxes for special exceptions that are listed in the zoning ordinance. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask. So based on the findings of fact, it is the opinion of the planning department that this variance should be ruled favorably.
Thank you. Any questions before we move on?
Did you talk to the petitioner about signage?
I believe Jackson did have a conversation, and they should be able to answer those questions. I don't believe there were any signs that were planned, but maybe they could speak to that.
And mailings went out for the neighbors?
Yes.
And we didn't have any phone calls or any opposition, any conversation? No. Did you talk to her then today, because we talked about the Zimmer building? Did she make a phone call to that, or we're just gonna?
So they have a letter, they have a postcard from the Salvation Army that says they're good. They also have space in their driveway, and I believe there's on-street parking on that stretch. So even without use of the Zimmer parking lot, we
Okay.
feel like they would have some space there,
Okay.
but they can address that too as well.
Ms. Salvador, would you like to get up and speak in favor of your petition, please?
Yes, like it's a newly business, and it's not like, I won't have any announcements I have to do personally, like, through, maybe Facebook, through friends, family, and things like that. I anticipate hopefully it'll do well, or to go, people come and order or, just call me and can you have this ready and pick up, I have sufficient parking, I feel, for the amount of traffic that will be coming in. I have talked to my neighbors, they didn't oppose to anything, so.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions of her?
Is this pretty much just they come and pick up the order after they've ordered sort of thing? You're not like a little retail outlet or something like that?
No, I don't know, it's kind of like any marketing, like, I don't know, like Mary Kay, where you do demonstrations and
Right.
things like that.
Right, okay.
It's pretty much based like on that.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Okay.
No.
All right, then we can close the meeting. Do we have anyone here? You may sit down, please. Do we have anyone here in opposition or even to speak in favor of Ms. Saldivar's request? If not, we'll close the meeting to the public. Gentlemen, any other questions, thoughts?
If there are no other further questions or comments, I'd move to approve.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, motion carried. Thank you, good luck with your business. Now we will move on to 2023-1104, a use variance for 4 Yarnell Point.
Yes, so for this use variance, the petitioner is requesting a use variance to allow a secondary residential structure within an R1 zoning district. The owners are planning on rebuilding the current accessory structure with a second story. They are also planning on removing and rebuilding the primary residence
Thank you.
at some point in the future. While we're building the primary residence, the homeowners plan to live in the newly renovated accessory structure. Once the primary structure is finished, the accessory structure will be used as a guest house or living quarters for family and friends. There is no plan to rent the space in the future, as multifamily uses are not permitted within an R1 zoning district. And that brings us to the recommendation. There does not appear to be any unnecessary hardship that makes this property unique enough to merit a deviation from the zoning regulations. So based on that, it is the opinion of the planning department that this variance should be denied.
Okay. Which one are we looking at first again?
04.
Okay, I'm on the wrong one then, okay.
Okay.
So this is the use variance.
Yeah.
for the-
And I know we've had a letter here from adjacent property owners that we've all received. Have you all
Yes.
received that, read it? I know they're all on vacation, hence the reason no one's here tonight. Do you guys have any questions?
I do. Justin, it's currently just a storage facility for boathouse? sort of
So
thing?
historically, it was a boathouse, which they kind of have different rules than either a shed or any other structure that you put on a property.
Okay.
So
But it wasn't residential, it was a storage facility of some sort?
the petitioner might be able to speak to that. I don't know what's currently in the space.
Okay.
Maybe
It
in a
was a residence.
It was a residence, a secondary structure, okay,
It's not been occupied for several years.
okay.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes,
welcome,
we want to hear all of them at once, or do we want to
No.
start one at a time?
one at a time.
Okay.
Only this one, please.
All right, the first question is, of course, what is the current situation? How did we get where we are today? The Galloways purchased the property roughly 6 years ago with the intent of living there, remodeling, leaving the structures as they originally were. And there are 3 structures on the property, as you can see from the aerial photo that I handed out. Then there was fire in the main residence, which made it not available for living space. Then there was, and still is going on, disputes with the insurance company as to what the coverage is, what they will pay. Which, of course, usually when you're a homeowner, if you're paying on a mortgage on a house and then it burns down or is severely damaged by a fire, you got to keep paying the mortgage payment. And if the insurance company doesn't come forward with sufficient funds to rebuild the structure, it puts you in a hard spot. That's where they're at. My understanding of the structure that they want to reconstruct is that it is used for storage purposes. It's been there forever. I think I may have checked at one time to determine what year it was constructed, but those 3 structures, the house and the 2 outbuildings, have been there since 1954. And it's been 18 feet 6 inches from the water. It's been 3.4 feet from the sideline, and the proposal is to remove it and reconstruct it as a 2-story auxiliary residence. That by itself is not a problem if they weren't planning on also constructing their main residence in the future, once they get insurance issues resolved and can move forward. As far as the hardship is concerned, it's an existing structure. We can either tear it down and rebuild it and enhance the neighborhood values by bringing the structure up to current standards, or leave it as it is. There's nothing to prevent it from staying as it is, even in its condition, even though that's certainly not desirable. The intent is to utilize the structure, elevate it out of the floodplain, because as a boathouse, it is in the floodplain, and bring it up to current code standards, leave it in the same footprint, on the same footprint that it is, and then use it for auxiliary residential use after the main house is reconstructed. You know, it's hard to say how long it's going to take to finish negotiations with the insurance company, but the idea is to begin construction of this auxiliary residence this coming spring, and get it finished this year so that they can actually move into it while they're working with the insurance company, securing the funds necessary to demolish and rebuild the main residence. I've done, I'd say, 100 of these around the lakes, and they may be on Barbie, they may be on Syracuse Lake, they may be on Wawasee. But it's not unusual to have a relatively large lot, and rather than add a wing onto a house, they prefer the open space, allow a second residence so that when people come to the lake, and they do, believe me, that there is plenty of space available for those people. That's a common occurrence around the lakes. I'm not sure whether this is the first time it's been considered by this board, but if it is, I'm certain it will probably be considered again, simply because it preserves open space rather than increasing the footprint of the main house. In this case, the hardship is the fire in the main residence. The main residence can't be reconstructed until the insurance company dispute is resolved. That means somewhere you have to find a place to live. Rather than rent and do nothing to this boathouse structure, the proposal is to bring it up to current standards, make it more attractive, use that as a residence, and then build the main residence. If they were to build the main residence without the ability to move into this residence, then I suggest the two accessory buildings would simply remain as they are. It's certainly an improvement to the neighborhood if both of those come down and one of them is rebuilt with reasonable appearance as opposed to a 1954 structure. And it would enhance the property values even by the simple removal of the one accessory structure that on the aerial photo I indicate would be removed. Then the house can be built in accordance with the plans, and I've given you a general layout of that house so you can see where it will be in relation to what's labeled the shed on the second page of the handout. That is the exact location that the building would be. There are several issues that have to be discussed in the later hearings because we've got 3 separate petitions that are filed. But from the standpoint of overburdening the real estate, and that's the impression I have from the letter that was sent in by the adjacent property owners, we're not overburdening it. In fact, we're reducing the burden on it by removing one of the accessory structures that's already there as a non-conforming use. The benefit to the neighbors is the removal of that, and certainly the improvement of the appearance of the remaining structure, which would be the second residence. The last page of the handout that I gave you is the proposed imposition of a covenant on that real estate. Certainly, the neighbors have been concerned about what happens with this structure after the main residence is rebuilt. Well, the intent of that covenant is simply to prevent it from being rented separately. It can be occupied by the current owners, it can be occupied by their guests or extended family, but it can't be rented out, for instance, as a bed and breakfast. It is considered one residential use, and it's to be by this owner and extended family and guests only. That solves the problem of significant traffic coming in. If this is not permitted, then the main residence, when it's ultimately rebuilt, will simply have a larger footprint, and it'll be the same number of people coming in, be they guests or extended family, for the purpose of enjoying the lake and visiting with the Galloways. We are we're dealing with a unique property that has several setback issues. First, setbacks from the water. Second, setback from the street that serves as the only point of access to this property. Those three setbacks significantly reduce the available building space without a variance. That means the house, if we don't have the accessory use of a second residence, is going to be larger and probably have a difficult time meeting all three of those setbacks on this lot. The lot is large, but it's also extremely valuable. And if you look at the residences on Winona Lake, the value keeps going up, and you don't build a cheap house on an expensive lot. You want the neighborhood to be enhanced by what you build. In this particular case, enhancing the neighborhood comes by removing two structures, allowing this one to be rebuilt, rather than leaving that existing structure used for storage purposes on the tract. And from a practical standpoint, it's a situation that benefits everyone, including the neighborhood. There's no method by which both of these accessory structures can be forced to be removed. They're legal non-conforming uses. And we don't want to leave the one, we want to tear it down. We simply want to enhance the existing structure and turn it into a residence, one, for the benefit of the owners, and two, down the road for the benefit of guests and extended family.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Snyder?
I wanted to hear again about this covenant. Whose covenant is this again? I
Okay,
didn't
if
quite
you look
catch all
at the
that.
last page.
It's
of
my
the-
hearing.
Okay, if you look at the last page of the handout, Rick, it's a quitclaim deed,
Oh, yeah.
and it's essentially from the Galloways to the Galloways for the sole purpose of two things. One, there are actually two parcels that are owned by the Galloways. This would combine them. But the more important one reads, neither of the two residences on the above-described real estate may be rented separately, one from the other, without the approval of the Warsaw Board of Zoning Appeals. This shall not prevent rental of both residences to the same tenant or use of either residence by extended family or guests. That's a covenant that runs with the title to the real estate, and it can't be removed without your approval, because we're voluntarily offering that to assure the neighbors that we're not going to have separate rentals or a bed and breakfast, that this is for the use of one family, essentially as one family residence, even though this isn't attached and isn't planned to be attached to the new residence to be constructed. If we attached it to the new residence to be constructed, we wouldn't be here, at least not on this question. What we want to do is maintain it as a separate structure, elevate it out of the floodplain, reconstruct it to current standards so it can be used as a residence. Then, after the new house is built, can be used for overflow guests or extended family.
So when the next owner comes along somewhere down the road, are they bound by this, or is it
Yes,
done?
it runs with the title.
Okay.
That's why we put it on our deed. The deed gets recorded. Every time the title company runs a search on this property, that covenant's gonna show up, and it will show up as an exception in the title commitment, putting the new owner on notice that can't rent them separately.
Scott, have you reviewed this? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I have lots of thoughts,
Okay. You want to hold off?
but yeah, I-
Okay. He's giving me the evil eye, so I'll stop there.
Yeah.
That was my question. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Anyone else? And does Mr. Galloway want to say anything in regards to this? Okay, thank you, Mr. Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have anyone in the audience that wants to speak in any way in regards to this, whether it's in opposition or in favor of? Okay, with that, I'll close the meeting to the public. Thoughts, concerns, questions?
Does the city attorney want to comment now?
well, I think in this deed, there's stuff that I guess you'd want to know whether you think some of the things like rent to the same tenant, extended family, or guests. Guests could be close personal friends. Guests could be anybody, right? Extended family could be close family, your brother and sister. It could be someone you kind of know that's extended family. So I don't know how important that portion of that term is to you. As a legal definition, I think it really means kind of nothing, right? Extended family and guests could be anybody, but I appreciate that they're trying to put in here that they're trying to make this a family or friends atmosphere to avoid that it's going to be some commercial type.
Because that's my
Thing.
question. What's to stop him from doing that and making it a long-term rental? And
Second
saying,
residence is a second residence.
Well, is that a legal term or just a perception? Steve's back up here.
I'm just listening.
Well, my question, I think hers is what about John Doe off the street if they want to go rent
and
out
he
to
says
them?
they're family or they're friends.
Well, let's put it this way. You've just spent a lot of money constructing a residence, and John Doe comes in and says, I want to rent it, or I want to live in it, but I don't want to pay any rent because rent's prohibited by the covenant. Well, that isn't going to happen. Let's look at it from a very realistic standpoint.
I have not read it, so I take your word for that. I didn't see that in there yet.
Yeah, it says they can't be rented separately.
Okay.
And if you want more restrictive language, I'm sure between Scott and I, we can come up with more restrictive language in that covenant. But this has always worked in the past, and that's why I used similar language, because it does have a history from a usage standpoint. I mean, the intent is, this is one family. Living on the lake, I can tell you that family likes to descend on you. And they like to descend on you all at the same time, usually 4th of July. And you don't want to tell them, no, you can't come because I don't have enough bedrooms. So I happen to have a guest room in my boathouse, something like this. Well, I have no intent of renting it out. I only intend to take care of my family or friends if you will, when I can't put everybody in the house.
When
And
when I
that's
look
what
at
the
this,
intent-
it says rental of both residences. I'm not sure I understand what both residences are. And I'm looking for what says you can't charge any money. Can you explain that to me?
Rental to me assumes there's a dollar amount there.
Right.
So it looks to me like, I get, yeah, that he could decide he's going to rent this and say it's family, it's a, you know, it's my best friend, it's,
Who are the both residences? Is this another property altogether?
Okay.
Once they build
So
the new
let's,
house.
let's
Oh,
put it,
the house on the
Boathouse and
boathouse,
the new
okay,
house.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
let's look at it this way. If that isn't, if that's too broad for you, let's say, and it shall not be occupied by extended family or guests for more than 7 days consecutively. You know, whatever limitations you want to put on it, what we're trying to do is say, this is our residence, and we're going to use it as we would if it didn't exist because we had to make the house bigger. Same thing. If our extended family wants to come to our main residence and stay for a month because they're moochers, and we want them to do that, we can. This just happens to be a structure that is not attached to the main residence.
My concern is not the length of time. My concern is that it becomes a moneymaker for, say, someone in the future who wants to defer their mortgage payments by renting the place out, and they say rental is not a legal term that, you know,
Rent is a legal term.
okay, then if that's okay with the city attorney, I would go with that. I would like to see something that says that there's no compensation allowed, however that would be appropriate.
Okay. There's no, it cannot be allowed to be used by some other person for compensation of any kind.
Again, I'd let the
Some
legal
other
lease between you and Scott, but that's what
What's
I'm
the term
concerned
of
with.
some other person?
right.
What does that mean? Some other person?
Well, I tried to document it here by saying it's going to be extended family, and that would be my mother, my sister. I have a cousin who's like a sister. That would be extended family. Guests would be people who want to come in for the weekend because we're having a wedding anniversary at the house.
Is it a second residence on the same property?
Yeah, it
Yes.
is.
Yes, and I'm very, very familiar with that neighborhood, and to the best of my knowledge, there are no other second, everyone, I live on the lake.
Single, it's an R1.
Yeah, it's a single-family residence right there, a
It's
single-family
single-family, yeah.
neighborhood. I live on the lake, and when I want my family to come, I want them in my house with me. The more the merrier.
It's still
More
a
kids come around.
single-family residence.
It's a-
There aren't going to be two families living on this property. And look at it from a property standpoint rather than a structure standpoint. If we connect it to the new house, then it's one residence. In this case, we want to put it back exactly where it is now. We just don't want to attach it to the house. That's the difference.
I mean, if somebody wants to rent their bedroom out to a family or friend that lives on the lake, whatever, and it's in that one residence, that's up to them. It's inside their house. You're talking about a completely separate
Separate
building,
building.
a second residence.
Which is precisely why we said it can't be rented out.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate, the property has 2 residences on there right now, actually 3, we would be taking it to 2, so there would be less. There are 3 buildings on there now, there are 2 residences on the property right now, it wouldn't be any different.
Two different addresses?
Not 2, well, yeah, it's 4A and 4B, yeah. Yeah, 4 and 4A, yeah, that's how it is.
If anyone's living in that boathouse, that's violating a lot of
The
a lot of things.
other 2 spots were residences. There's 3 buildings.
So if the city became aware of that, we'd have to take action on it.
Cease and desist.
Yeah.
So the
exactly.
question is, are we creating more than a one-family residence? Because that's what's permitted in an R1 district. And the mere fact that we have a space between this structure and the proposed new structure, does that make it a two-family residence as opposed to a one-family residence as defined under the ordinance? And I suggest to you, it doesn't.
It looks to me like it certainly could become two-family residences.
It
It's also
could
owns
be,
the
but
property.
for the covenant. That's why we're putting the covenant on it, so it can't become a two-family residence. And if you want that language refined, like I said, I'm sure Scott and I can work on that language so that it becomes as restrictive as you want.
Thoughts?
Well, for me personally, I don't really care if it's separate or not, as long as my concern's about nobody's paying any money to stay there, and if he goes with the 7 consecutive days, I don't see the difference between whether it's attached or not attached.
True. There's no way we could ever enforce any of that.
Right.
And then they could potentially undo it, you know.
Exactly.
So it doesn't really.
Well, then there's
I think
another
that's a whole
concern.
separate thing.
I think that's a whole and I agree that's not, but that thought is there.
And if we need to tighten that up legally, then I leave that to Scott and Steve.
Well, the Galways have a big property there. They have several structures there already. They could keep the same size structures, attach a breezeway, and then they don't need anything from you as far as a variance. It's all one big house, right? And then whoever stays there stays there. They're asking for it to be a separate structure that's in the same footprint. And what I think you're trying to say is, what's the definition of guest or extended family? And I don't know. There's not really a legal, from sitting up here with you guys, I think if you want to have your friend come over and spend the night, or stay a week, or stay a couple weeks, nobody has any issue with that. I don't think you have any issue with that. I know what you're trying to say as far as the guests or extended family. You don't want it to be a commercial endeavor or to get out of hand as far as what they might be using it for, right? I know Toby. I think he's an exceptionally nice person. I don't know if that makes me biased or not. But I think that extended family and guests is just a broad term. If you want it to be narrowed some way, I think you should ask that it be narrowed some way if that part makes you uncomfortable.
Well, I get back to what he said. Nobody's going to rent out for nothing. I mean, if they can't charge any money to whoever lives there, that certainly, to me, is going to discourage anybody trying to pay their mortgage by renting it out for nothing. Now, for the 7 days and that, I'm not, that's not a big sticking point for me. I just don't want it to have the possibility of being a commercial enterprise as a second residence.
Well, currently, the zoning ordinance doesn't talk about second rental. It talks about a second resident, right?
Right.
So
And
it
that
doesn't define anywhere in there whether you earn rent off of a second
But a second
Resident.
residence in an R1 is non-conforming.
is non-conforming. You would need a use variance to be able to do that.
To do that.
And it doesn't have anything to do in the zoning, whether or not it's a rental or not a rental. But it's a permitted variance if you guys want there to be a variance for there to be a second structure on one property. And Steve's arguing that's one residential property, whether or not you care whether there's a breezeway that connects it, whether that makes it any different really, or not, or whether you put more definitions on whether it be rented or not rented, or what the term of guest is, or what the length of stay is. You have all kinds of options, I suppose, is.
Well, and I want to go back to this letter. I'm sure you all read this. I
Yeah.
know I did. And it's unfortunate that we have property owners that could not be here tonight due to the holiday. And we do have property owners that do not want that second residential space on that lot. I think that's something to consider.
But all they have to do is build a breezeway from the main residence to that way, and they get around it.
Right.
They would still have to, if they were trying to construct it the way they've proposed it today, they would still need to get the variances for the setbacks and the different thing. If they connected it, they wouldn't need the height, but they'd also need to do the floodplain and the setbacks. But other than that, they could connect structures with a breezeway and pretty much get something very similar without having to go before the board, so.
Somebody else got anything to say?
Anyone else?
Umpteen thousand years ago, when I was in that structure, doing heating and cooling, it was tight quarters. I like the fact that they want to raise it above the floodplain.
That's
That's
just what
just that
the,
structure.
That's just that structure.
We're not,
Right.
yeah,
Boathouse.
Just that
Right.
structure. Because it was close to the water.
yeah.
So how would this differ from a detached garage with an apartment over the top of it?
Well, I think what they're trying to do with the setbacks would change, make it differ. Like it is very similar. So if you look at it as like a pool house or a detached garage, it's very similar to that. I think where it deviates is they're trying to do this right on the lakefront. In my mind, that stands out as being the most significant thing because boathouses are treated one way and any other accessory structure is treated completely differently. And what they're doing is they're taking that positioning of the boathouse and creating a residential structure.
Creating, yeah.
it doesn't look like
But
it's
they're
gonna
moving it,
inhibit
aren't they?
anybody's view. I mean, it looks like there's a wooded lot next to there, and,
Correct.
you know, that's usually the biggest issue people bring up, you're blocking my view sort of thing, right?
And people talk about the character of the lakefront. This plat has a 75-foot setback as platted that expired in 1970, but it had a platted 75-foot setback along the lake. So they were talking about the character of the lake with where the buildings are positioned, so.
But he says this is a legal non-conforming use, and so they can redo something with that structure in the same place, and,
Make it to be a boathouse.
yeah, but, I mean, does that enhance the character of the lake that you're talking about any more than? That's tough.
I'm at a loss.
Anybody got more to add? Otherwise, I'm gonna just throw a motion out
Yep,
there and then
that's
you can
what
vote
I'm-
yea or nay.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve it with the idea that the length of stay is limited and there is no compensation by any party who would stay in this residence. And then legalese to be worked out between Steve and Scott.
Let me throw in a question real quick, Justin. So we go ahead and do as Rick's proposing, and they build that so that they can live there while they're constructing the lake house. Do we have a time frame on occupancy of the lake house versus them maintaining that forever and just having a bare lot there after they tear down the house?
No, we don't have anything that would stop them from doing that, but I mean, it would just be one residence on the
It would
lot.
be one residence.
Yeah, I mean, if they demoed the primary structure, I mean, that's another way they could potentially work around the two residence thing, is if they just demoed the existing building and then got a variance for the setbacks.
I guess what I'm thinking is that I don't want this boathouse secondary residence for guests turning into a permanent structure, and whether the house remains, because they can't get the insurance worked out, or whether they level the house and just have, I mean,
That's definitely possible. We
Yeah.
don't have a crystal ball. We don't
Yeah.
know how any of that's gonna work.
just a thought.
But there wouldn't be any mechanisms for us to force them
Force them.
to do it,
To-
yeah,
yeah.
to build a house.
Yeah.
or-
That's a challenge.
Do I have anyone that wants to,
How is
Second.
how is any of this enforced? How does,
Oh, I know, lake people,
yeah,
they'll be watching it like a hawk's.
And if you want, we can add to the deed a provision that says it can be enforced by the Board of Zoning Appeals or by any owner of real estate within 200 feet, if you want that added in.
Might be a bonus there
Yeah, that might be,
to add that.
I kind of like that.
So the one thing I would add is this: it's not up to me what you guys approve. And so I'm not overly comfortable with Steve and I working out specific language after today's meeting, because I don't vote. I don't choose what you guys agree to. It's all your decision. I just try to help when you have
Well,
questions.
all I'm suggesting is that you two work out some legalese, and then we'll make the ultimate approval. And if
I
we
was
have to
just
do
gonna
that-
say, is that really what, are you saying you'd like to see it tabled while we work out definitive language that we can come up with and
What would
like?
you guys like to see? Again, I'm not in charge of what, here's what I'm saying. I don't decide what you guys approve. If you guys would like to approve the language, Steve will do an excellent job on trying to conform with what you're asking him to do, so tell him.
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't want to be the decision maker whether he's satisfied you all
Right.
with what the restrictions are on this property.
And no one's asking me to be the final arbiter. We'll do that. We're just asking you to use your expertise to work with him.
So we
That's the
can
best
work
problem.
on it, but I don't think a decision then could be made
Agreed.
that I can say I approve what Steve
Right,
came up
right.
with. I don't think that's fair to you as a
So that he's not
board.
approving for us.
Right.
That if,
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think if you give clear direction to Mr. Snyder, he'll work very hard to satisfy you so that you can approve it. But,
But I don't see why you can't look at it and say, this is something I see you may want to consider, or, you know.
I'm happy to help him. I just, clearly my role is not to approve or disapprove
Right. We're
something
looking
that
for your
comes
advice and consent.
through the board. So I would,
And then, once the language, so in other words, am I hearing really what I think I'm hearing, that we really need to table this until we can have definitive language that we as a board approve of versus what the language reads right now?
what I'm hearing from you all is you don't want to approve it as it sits right now, that you would like him to have the opportunity to present it in some different way with more restrictive language in it, that you're not denying it tonight, but you're also not approving it as presented. So I think you're probably going to ask for him to come back with some additional information.
Is there some
at
sort of
another
acute
meeting.
time schedule here, or can we just put it to next month, or?
Well, we can't start construction until the weather breaks anyway, although there is some demolition that could occur. But I just want to make sure I understand what you're looking for in that covenant, besides what it already says. One, no rental. No income is going to be generated by that structure. Maybe that solves your problem, Rick. And that, for instance, guess the maximum stay would be 10 days. I don't want to put that limitation on family because maybe mother needs to move in. But for guests, yeah, put it on there for 10 days. And we can't, I don't think we can commit to a date by which the main house will be constructed, because we may end up in a lawsuit with the insurance company. We don't know at this
Yeah,
point.
true.
And insurance
What was
companies,
the other point you made about the 200 feet again?
yeah, enforceability would be by
Okay, yeah.
the Board of
Right.
I
Zoning
like that too,
Appeals
broadening the
or
enforceability.
any property owner within 200 feet.
You included the city in there somewhere too, didn't you, the BZA or whatever?
Yep.
Okay.
One address. Needs to be one address.
address.
Yeah,
No part A, B, C,
nope,
one address, one residence.
it's gonna be
a good
4
point.
yard now.
Yeah.
And
Lot number
it
4.
is still a single-family property. That's the way I'm looking at it. But, you know, I guess you could, if you're looking to approve it, you could approve it subject to me providing,
I
To
want,
judge.
I want the new language before anything is approved.
okay,
Good try though.
Yeah, yeah.
Try to pay you the big bucks.
okay, then I can do that.
Thank you.
Won't be tomorrow, but it'll be within the next few days. I'll get a draft of it to Justin, a draft of it to Scott, and, we'll chew on it a little bit and make sure if it needs some refinement to meet what you've discussed tonight, we'll get it refined.
Thank you. Thank you.
So is there anything else? So we heard definitively no compensation. Definitively guests no longer than 10 days is if that wording gets worked out.
And enforcement by BZA and residents within 200 feet.
Yep.
So they're two neighbors.
One address.
One address. 4 things.
Well, do we want that, okay, I'm thinking too, do we want that language to say versus the 200 feet, anyone right there on Yarnell Point, Yarnell Drive, whatever that property address technically legally is?
How close are the 5 people or whatever that's signed up?
Well, and see, that's what, I mean,
Well, the 200 feet might not include that.
that's why I'm
Right.
saying, do we want it to include Yarnell?
It should be
what's
Yarnell
that?
Point.
Point,
That includes all those properties.
How about if I find the people who signed the remonstrance letter and see how close they are to this lot, and just say, if that's 275 feet, that's what we'll make it.
okay,
Okay.
I'd go
Yeah.
along with that one.
That's okay.
But I think we need to encompass that due to the fact that we have all these signatures here. So do I need a motion to table this,
Yeah.
Rick?
Well,
I'll
yeah.
make the motion to table.
Go
to
ahead,
the-
sorry.
Well, you have two choices. You could approve it subject to him meeting that tonight, or you could say, we want further discussions about this issue, but you should know those are things that we're going to be looking for. So it's kind of two separate things,
Okay.
really, to
I think you
guide
wanted
Mr.
option 2,
Snyder.
didn't you?
Yeah, we want option 2. Well, we want to see this in writing. What Steve's going to propose to us, we want to see that in writing. Therefore, we do not want to make a decision on this tonight.
Also move as you just stated.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
That's number 4.
Now,
That was 4.
The
So,
next logical question is, do we bump the other 2 variances to January as well?
what are your thoughts on that?
I don't feel strongly one way or another.
Yeah.
We can hear them tonight if that helps anything, but, I don't know how much of this will
Well,
be
there's
rehashed.
really no point in hearing those if you're not going to approve the structure.
Exactly.
Because then the other 2 become irrelevant.
That's
So
correct.
that's why I was suggesting, let's get the covenant in shape. Let's hear all 3 of them in January. And I'm not sure what that January date is and
I have it
whether I'm even
someplace.
alive in January.
The 22nd. Oh, yeah. 22nd.
Yeah, 22nd.
22nd,
22nd,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, man.
And then we
Where are
can
you gonna be?
finish everything at one time,
Okay.
all right?
Perfect, thank you. So what do you want me to do in regards to these other 2?
We would need to table them,
Okay.
yeah.
So do you need a motion in regards to that? Okay, so I need a motion in regards to tabling 2023-1103 and 2023-1102.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we'll see you next month, Steve. Thanks for your time.
There's one more.
Yep, I know. Oh, we have to do them separately? Oh, we can't do them together.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one was for 04.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried. 02,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, so we
So
clear
you
on
did
that?
1103 now, I believe.
Oh, 3, sorry, you're right.
1103 and then 1102. correct?
1103 and 2. I'm sorry. 1202,
So we did 1104,
correct.
and we need to do 1103 now.
03,
They did.
Oh,
We
they
did.
did? I thought
Keven
you said
and,
two.
and Johnson,
yep,
and then 1202 was the same, correct?
correct. Okay, next up, we have, what is this one? 2023-12-01, use variance for 2321 East Winona Avenue, Rebar Shelby Bowen.
Yeah, so the petitioner has requested a use variance to allow a mixed-use residential development within an I-3 zone. The proposed project features 75 units and other potential uses like commercial, retail, and office spaces. This area is within the Argonne Corridor and is part of the 2020
Sounds pretty
Vision Plan.
exciting.
Yeah.
The plan calls for redevelopment of this property and recommends such use as retail, office space, and residential. The general corridor vision has been encouraging a mixed-use neighborhood in this area. Okay, let's continue here.
That makes it high class right there. eh?
Yeah.
Plaza.
So based on the information provided in the findings of fact, it is the opinion of the planning department that this use variance should be ruled favorably. And again, this is based on the property sitting
Yes.
vacant and its current industrial zoning for about 30-plus years. Clearly, it's difficult to, there's practical difficulty in using the property in its current condition.
This is Yankee property.
Correct.
Yes. Any questions of Justin before we move on?
I have none.
The petitioner, sir?
It's, wait, Justin, how long has this been going on?
I moved there in '76, and that thing was there, and I thought, this is an eyesore. This is my best moment ever in Warsaw.
So I had just one thing real quick. I know Justin's intro said 75 units, but in looking at the letter and looking at the spreadsheet, it appears maybe 83 units. And I don't know if that's a difference maker for anybody, but I just saw a discrepancy possibly between,
Yeah, it does say
As-
82 here.
I see like an 83 on the matrix and in their letter.
Okay.
But
My apologies.
no, I didn't know if it was, which they were trying.
And one clarification be, he's probably corrected at one point, 10 of the units were going to be potentially commercial or residential. Now they're residential, so they were kind of considered flex units in the original plan. And now they're going to be residential plus some commercial space.
So there is going to be some commercial?
There will be, yes.
Right here.
Okay.
Has all the issues with this property been
Yeah.
resolved?
Yeah, it was remediated in the early 2000s. They'll do, there's testing and different things that will have to happen, but there were things that were moved from the site in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And it's been approved by the state?
Yeah, the state, the EPA would have been,
Okay.
they'll have to do phase ones and all that good stuff, and,
And we've done air, water, soil. Now we're down to the last test, and that's in order for us to demolish the structures. They'll actually test for hazardous materials. And how that will impact us is whether we can crush them and reuse them as fill, or do we have to do some other type of remediation on the existing structures. The land, there's some bad dirt on the far west that we'll have to manage during construction, but otherwise, we've got the path forward to develop the site.
Wow.
What's this lot size, the whole?
It's a little under 3 acres,
Oh.
I think, total.
And this is a question, Justin. I know this has a Winona Avenue address, but there is technically no access to this property from Winona Ave,
we'll
right?
probably change that when we
That's what I
go
was
in.
just, will that
Yeah,
address
they'll have to
change to whatever, Durbin or?
Yeah, we'll have to
McKinley.
readdress it.
McKinley?
I think, yeah.
Okay, I was just curious about that. Okay, we'll turn the floor over to you. Would you please state your name?
Sure, thank you.
Our newspaper?
Yeah, my name is Shelby Bowen. I'm president and owner of Rebar Development. Thank you for hosting tonight. I'm excited to take another step forward. We've been working on the project the better part of 3 years, probably.
Wow.
And, we're at the 10-yard line on the testing to get the release to do the demolition and then move right in, as you can see, to development. And when I visited Warsaw back 3-4, well, I've looked at things over the years, and when I got serious about it 3 or 4 years ago, they showed me the Argonne Corridor plan. It was really interesting. And we went and looked at some things through there, and we were really cutting through. And Alan Teos and Jeremy Skinner said, oh, and the city owns this piece. And I loved it. I thought it was hiding in plain sight. I mean, it's gnarly today, but its proximity to Winona and Winona Lake and easier access northeast. A lot of folks that are working outside of Warsaw who currently aren't living here, we think would like to live here. And so this spot really just appealed to our vision for redevelopment. And we've done a lot of projects similar to this building that we're proposing. And we're very close to being able to get started, which has preempted this variance request before you tonight. Happy to answer questions. You can see, first of all, the site plan, and what we've tried to do here is create really, because it still is a gritty industrial corridor, including Warsaw Chemical across the street. So the plaza, which will probably be one of the nicest plazas in the region, is designed to give the folks that live on that side really nice view and a nice area for them on the north side of the building. And then the south side actually will have some lake views as you get up the second, third, fourth floors. If you were to turn to the second to last sheet, we've got amenity spaces on the fourth floor. So our residents can, it's a cafe and work from home and an outdoor terrace, which would be pretty special amenity for the folks who are going to live here.
Yeah, that roof deck is good.
Yeah, it's going to be really awesome. And we've done that before. If you're in Lafayette, we did a project right downtown there called the Ellsworth that has a really cool outdoor patio up on the fifth floor there. We think that this connectivity, both to the Krebs trailhead and then maybe to downtown, to the north, and then also, of course, to Winona to the south. So we plan to create a trailhead here and then that connection across Winona Avenue. We've talked to Jeremy and the staff about how can we create a safe trail crossing there, and there's a lot of different options to accomplish that. I think that's a critical piece to this. By having the one building, then you'll see on the first floor there's commercial, fitness, and our leasing space. And we've got adequate parking now based on this final plan to really accommodate commercial use and residential. So after a lot of different iterations, and then once you start looking at the site, there's some topography and other challenges that this really lent itself to the best development plan. Again, happy to answer any questions about the project, any detail. Yes, sir.
I was just curious about what materials will be used on the outside, what will make up
Yeah,
the
that's a great
exterior?
question, and I didn't tee that up. He asked that on his own, because we're so proud of the buildings we build. It'll be cast stone and brick, mostly. There's some areas where, you know, we can't really afford to build the whole thing in brick, so we'll use either metal or fiber cement panel. But if you were to go get online and look at rebar projects, I think you would be hopefully inspired by that architecture. So mostly, and certainly the front east portion will be all brick, cast stone or brick.
What is your website? I'd like to do that.
It's Rebar Dev, REBARDEV.com, rebardev.com, or you can Google rebar development, and we've got several projects in central Indiana. I think the closest is either Yorktown or Lafayette.
They're just pictures, though, that we can...
Yes, sir.
Yorktown's over by Muncie?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a smaller project there. The one maybe most similar to this would be in Plainfield. It's called the Barlow, and it's a kind of a similar sized building.
Look that up.
Jeremy, do you have is there any interest in this property industrially?
No, I mean, it's sat as an industrial use vacant, so this
There's
is
no
the...
interest. I've dealt with this for a long time. When I was on the redevelopment for a long time, this piece of property, and there's always was a concern of, you know, Warsaw Chemical, Dalton Foundries, basically it's an industrial place, but no one seemed to ever be interested in
Yeah, I think just the general cost of,
In that zoning part of it.
yeah, trying to rehab the back building, I think, is what tripped a lot of people up, and the front, I mean, the front,
Yeah,
the rehab, the cost of it is pretty high, but
Oh, those are nice.
just the success we had with the Arnold building, I think has kind of caused this area to have more energy. The 2020 plan to kind of revision the corridor has definitely helped create some momentum and some excitement about what this could be and all the connections he mentioned. So I think it does make sense with industry moving out of this area and not coming back to this specific spot. It does make sense to evolve and do urban infill where we have mixed uses.
Yeah, and we looked
Yeah.
at, we brought in an architectural team and a structural engineer and a civil engineer to try to see, is there anything we could repurpose or save? And it is just in really, really tough shape. Not only like functionally obsolete, it's dilapidated to a point where it would be, it's less expensive to start over, let me say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yes, sir.
see
Your
that.
website actually has the Gatke warehouse and loft, so that's what it's.
It's changed, that was the start of the project, it's the RW lofts. What's interesting is, not everybody, I've been to a lot of kind of town events and meetings and talked to people. Not everybody looks fondly on the Gatke era, I guess, and when they left and how they left the site, which is in pretty rough shape. And so we did some research. RW is Reuben Williams, who really is fondly looked at here locally from Civil War on up through being an editor of the Warsaw Times. And so we thought that was more appropriate. So we'll roll out a new brand marketing exercise.
And which one of these was it you said was closest that I should look at?
Probably the Barlow.
Okay, that's one right there. Yeah, all brick, wow, very nice.
Mostly, yeah, and there's some areas that aren't as visible where we've used some hardy plank and fiber cement and changed up material and broke up the facade, but the areas that are most visible will do cast stone and brick.
Okay, say again,
Yes, sir.
you said something earlier about, the demolition of this property.
Yes, sir.
And the materials that are going to be demolition.
Yes.
They're going to go,
Yeah, they'll crush, reuse them, and we'll cover them with dirt, because there's plenty of room to raise that site, put the building pads on top.
Okay.
That's the least expensive way to demolish all those structures, because it's mostly concrete and brick that's left. So they'll remove some steel. There's some interesting steel in there from where the railroad expert
Right.
came through.
yeah.
And then there's the steel in the old warehouse, but everything else will get crushed on site and reused as fill.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we have bid to both local and non-local demolition contractors and continue to do so. We encourage local subcontractors to reach out and be a
I mean, a
part.
while back, there was a problem with Warsaw Chemicals, some
Yes,
rainwater, stormwater,
Yeah.
something got
yes,
going in the wrong direction.
yes. And we have
And-
wells and we're monitoring. And there's a restrictive covenant that you can't use the groundwater. But, now with city utilities, it's a non-issue.
Okay.
But yes, there's still some of that to be sensitive to. And quite frankly, because the project agreement was approved maybe 9 months ago, potentially. And it's just been very, very difficult to kind of get through all of those challenges. But we're on the backside of it now, so.
Good.
Okay.
Glad to hear it.
Okay.
Any other questions from Mr. Shelby or for Mr. Shelby? If not, I'll close the meeting. Gentlemen, any other comments?
I'm going to make a motion, we approve this.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay,
All
he
in
got it.
favor?
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
Look forward to seeing that.
Thanks, Shelby.
Yeah, thanks a
Well,
lot.
Appreciate
Yeah.
your vision.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
that was good.
That is something else.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Sometimes I wonder how I get myself into this, but it's fun. And I don't know if you all know the backstory too. The state of Indiana is investing in this project. They believe strongly in what's happening, and they've contributed to try to make this project possible.
Good.
And the RDA through the Regional Development Authority has also supported the project.
Are construction material costs coming down much yet?
They are, most importantly, they've leveled out enough.
Well, this one,
Okay.
So, yes,
Yeah.
which to me feels like they're going down because they're not escalating. And so they're more predictable, and things have slowed down generally here in the last half of the year because of the economy, which makes subcontractors a little hungrier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
Any
we're
anticipated?
very active, we're building other stuff, so we get typically good subcontractors.
Okay. Any thoughts about anticipated rates, range from the one bedroom to two bedroom sort of thing?
Yeah, the one bed will probably be around 1,200 a month, and up, depending on size and what floor and
Right.
views. And the two beds will be around
I
1,600
think we
a
need
month
to
and
sign
up.
up here, don't we?
And, I think those,
On the top.
really, given that this will be a Class A, the finishes are really fantastic. Quartz counters, stainless steel appliances, ceiling fans, tile, backsplashes, the showers, and, I mean, really, they're wonderful apartments, so I think that they'll be,
Your others have filled up pretty quickly, have they?
they have all pre-leased and leased really well.
Yeah,
Good.
okay, very good.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
But each project's different, I toss and turn at night, all the time, all of them. But I like this market, I don't think anything exists here like what we do. I think there are some people who would live here if this product was here, and so I'm looking forward to getting underway.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Any other questions or any other,
No, they're busy.
okay, no other business, Rick?
I'd move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then I'm buying at the downtown if anybody wants to come on down. You gonna call Tom right away?